The Fantasy Skirmisher.
Welcome to the Fantasy Skirmisher. I'm Nevin, and today I'll be reviewing Sellswords and Spellslingers. Sellswords and Spellslingers is a cooperative or solo fantasy miniatures game for 1 to 6 players and is designed and illustrated by Andrea Sveligoy. The game was published in 2018 by Ganesha Games. Andrea is a prolific designer and is probably best known for his solitaire dungeon delving game, 4 Against Darkness. This game is sold as a PDF set of rules and cards for $8 on the Ganesha website. However, you could buy the rulebook on lulu.com and the cards from drivethroughcards.com. In addition to the rules, the game comes with event, monster, spell, and potion cards. In Sellswords and Spellslingers, each player controls a number of player characters, or PCs as they're known in the game. The number of PCs you can have in your warband is determined by the number of players. So for example, if you are playing solitaire, you can have 3 to 5 PCs. If it's a 2-player game, you could have 2 to 5, and so on and so forth, up to 6 players, where each player would control 1 to 2 PCs. So this is an activation system game where you roll 1 to 3 d20s to determine if your player character can activate. So after you decide how many actions you want a player character to have, what you do is you roll the dice to see if they activate. If you roll an 8 or better, then you get an activation. If you roll a 1 through 7, that means you need to draw an event card, and that is how the foes, non-player characters, monsters, the terms all mean the same, they're interchangeable throughout the rulebook. That is how they activate. Also in the event cards, there are certain events, traps, things like that that could happen. So let's take a look at the event cards. So the first one here is Horde Activates. So monsters are either loners or they could work together in hordes. So a horde is defined by 2 or more monsters that are in base contact together. And so if a horde activates, they move and attack as one. Here, that's a big one. So the foe closest to the player character who drew this card is larger than normal and more powerful than normal. Monster Frenzy. So this is all foes and plays, including hordes, wandering monsters. They all activate, charging or shooting as appropriate. That may come in handy. There's one card in this deck, and this is where you find some treasure, silver pieces, or an item such as lockpicks, key, so on and so forth. Once you draw this card, it is removed from the game, and then anything in your discard pile gets reshuffled into the event deck. Reinforcements for the minions. Minions are smaller monsters, generally just have 1 hit point, such as goblins and skeletons. Ambush card, so a minion moves out of a spawning point, which could be a bush, boulder, behind a tree, or other type of obstacle that provides cover, and moves closest to the PC and tries to shoot or attack it using a charge. I stepped on a scorpion, so this is a form of a trap. So here your character gets poisoned, or could potentially be poisoned by stepping on a snake, centipede, or scorpion. And the player character has to pass a DL 10 Constitution. So DL means danger level. So it's the same thing as a target number. And we'll go into more danger level later. But so on a D20 you need to roll a 10 or higher Constitution to be able to to avoid damage from poison. And once this card is played, it is removed and the discard deck is reshuffled. Here you have Monster Activates, that's close to the PC. Wandering Monster appears, so this is determined by the scenario information. Loss of Balance, so I guess it's kind of like a trap, right? So your player character stumbles on a little hole in the ground, like a pothole or something like that, or a lifted cobblestone on a road, whatever terrain that person's on. And you have to make a danger level 10 terrain roll, or you fall prone. So if you fall prone, well, if you get hit by a monster, it's at a penalty to you. and takes an action to be able to stand back up. Horde activates again, another wandering monster, another ambush card. Here's a trap, and that gets removed as well after it's played. Things could get worse. So if a scenario has a complication, some type of event in the scenario, this is the card that activates it. Another monster activates, Monster Frenzy, a scenario event. They're at or back, so this is a minion reinforcement card where they get deployed from where your character started from. Another Horde activates, Mana Flux. So you roll a d6, and on a 1 or 2, magic rolls are a -2 until the end of the scenario. Nothing happens on a 3 to 4. Or if you roll a 5 or 6, all magic rolls are at a +2 till the end of the scenario. Another monster activates, and he's loaded. So the monster closest to the player character has double the normal of silver pieces or gem treasure, if any. So once this card is played, it is also removed. So let's take a look at the monster cards. So here we have Skeleton Warrior, and at the top of the monster cards has tags. So Skeleton is a minion, meaning this is a monster that will form together into a horde, as opposed to a loner, which will stay a singular lone monster. They're undead and have cheap weapon. Some tags are not used in the base game and may be relevant in upcoming supplements, or they could be used in any homebrewed scenarios that you design yourself. So looking at the stats for the monster, Skeleton has a danger level of 6. The danger level means the same thing as like a target number. So this is a target number to hit, 6 or greater. It has 1 hit point before it's dead, and the damage it deals to you, the player character, is 1. And because skeletons have no pockets, they don't carry any treasure, right? So some monsters will have special abilities, which are written on the bottom, such as the skeletons who are immune to poison, disease, flaming oil, and certain spell effects of the mind. And also they have a danger level of 10, not 6, against arrows and crossbow bolts, and a danger level of 4 against crushing weapons, such as warhammers, so on and so forth. And they're also vulnerable to holy water. Mountain Brigands. So you can see the tag, human, minion, so they do group together, and rogue. And these are ambush specialists. So if they do show up as reinforcements or a wandering monster, they have an ability called Snap 2 cover. And so Snap 2 means that when they deploy, whatever inches, and in this case it's 4, if they're near like cover terrain, such as woods or ruins or something like that, they will move to that cover when they're deployed. We have hobgoblins, ice giant, orc chieftain, orc warrior, black knight, a barbarian assassin, chaos knight, goblin warrior, ratman, greater minotaur, warlock of Mount Lauren. So this is would be an NPC, a very specific character. A greater werewolf, wraith, a bear, kobold warrior, an elite hobgoblin, a chaos barbarian, minor demon, plague goblins, necromancer, ghouls, brain devourer, wild orc shaman, orc brute, stone elemental, lizard man, and a lizard champion. Now, Drive-Thru Cards has a monster expansion, which are right here. So if you get the expansion set, you'll also get a Shadow Knight, spearman, a sphinx, a shadow. Tags are undead, loner, ghost, dungeon, and you can see lots of special abilities there, a lot of text. A savage man, night orc archer, a mud man, a many-eyed watcher. Holy cow, danger level 17, hit point 6, deals damage 1, but lots of treasure if you can get it. A manticore, a maggot head, longbowman, a leech, iron automation, a harpy, a halfling spearman, forest guardian, a dwarven axeman, a dwarven arquebuser, I hope I pronounced that right, drunk dwarf veteran, a druid, a dark elf crossbowman, a chimera, a barbarian war chief, and an armed crossbowman. So that just gives you a lot more options in creating homebrewed scenarios, which is fantastic because as I'll show you a little bit later on when we do some play examples, this is a great miniatures game to also integrate RPG elements into as well. So in Sellswords and Spellslingers, spells are represented by cards and found as scrolls in scenarios. You may also find magic items that allow you to cast spells as well. So these are the spell cards, and you can see this spell right here, Death Curse. It has a danger level 14, meaning that's the target number you must roll on a d20 to successfully cast the spell. There's two types of ways to cast spells. If a player character has the spell reader trait, they can read scrolls, but once it's successfully cast, the scroll is disintegrated and it's no longer usable. If you have the more expensive trait spellcaster, which means you're kind of building a wizard character, right? Then in addition to casting spells, you could also learn them. So the 5 XP cost is how much experience points it takes to learn the spell. So that way it's reusable, each game. And it costs 300 silver pieces to be able to purchase the Death Curse scroll. So we have Death Curse, and the other spells include Fireball, Freedom, where you could unbound or unshackle somebody or someone who's caught in a trap, free them. Frost Blast, Heal, Storm, Bestow Flight, Magic Dart, Magic Shield, Protect Others, Knock Down, Tangle Bow, Teleport Fiend, Teleport, Death Cloud, and Enhance Others. Now let's take a look at the potion cards. So potions are one-shot use magical concoctions that could either be purchased in town, they could be found on the battlefield, or you can make them if you have the alchemy trait. And that is what the danger level is for. In between scenarios, you could try to create your own potion, and you would need to roll an 8 or greater for the potion of healing to be able to successfully make that potion. So if you purchase the potion of healing, it would cost 100 silver points. So a potion of healing, as you could guess, it restores 1 lost hit point, or it could also remove 1 condition, such as blindness, paralysis, disease, so on and so forth. Now the other potions that come with the game is Potion of Vigor, Potion of Super Healing, Potion of Spider Climbing, Potion of Spell Enhancing, Potion of Fury, Potion of Deafness, and Blade Poison. So now we're going to take a look at how to build a player character, so that way we could get some terrain and some miniatures on the table and kind of go through some of the mechanics. When you create your warband, you have only 60 XPs to be able to create them with. And you must spend between 5 and 40 XPs on each player character. So you can have some unspent XPs on a player character. And also player characters can take negative traits which may allow you extra XPs to help build out your character. But it's the traits that define your party. So there's a lot of traits and different types of traits, and they all have an XP cost. So for example, you have rare traits here, and they're marked with an R. If it's rare, that means you can only have a single player character with that trait. There's natural traits, which are marked with an N, and then you have level traits, which you could purchase through XPs multiple times to level up, that given trait. So what are the types of traits? Well, there's a huge variety to choose from. And when you create your character, you could really put together the series of traits which kind of develop a personality, which I'll show you in a minute with one that I created for this video. So list of traits is acrobat, alchemy, which I mentioned, where you can create potions, amphibious, armor, archery trait, battle lust, battle caster, buckler, charisma, cleric, combat dodge, crossbow, danger sense, deadly blow, extra hit points, fast, fighter, fire into melee, foresters, flaming oil flask, free disengage, good shot, horde fighter, keen senses, leader, lock picking, lucky, hero, healer, magic mystery, martial arts, martial block, merchant, mountaineer, nocturnal, outdoor specialist, pickpockets, pummeling, quick reflexes, riding, safe retreat, shield, smart sniper, specialist hunter, spellcaster, spell reader, stealth strong, strong will, swamp walk, tough, traps, very fast, and whirlwind of steel. So you can see there's quite a few traits that you can purchase to build your character. And if you're building multiple player characters, it's kind of a tough task to be able to balance the 60 XPs to create a nice balanced warband. So you can also assign negative traits to your player characters, and negative traits give you extra XPs to work with. But you can only do that at player creation. So negative traits include burly, clumsy, dependent, glory hound, greedy, heavy drinker, hesitant, impulsive, slow move, unfit, weak, and weak-willed. So, like I said, you could really get an RPG feel for this game if you wanted to play it that way. So for upcoming examples that we're going to go through, I created Osgoth the Barbarian. So player characters start with 3 hit points, not a lot, right? And also have 4 speed. That is the standard speed per action in a game. My Barbarian Osgoth cost 22 of the 60 experience points that I would get to create a party. So the traits I assigned to him is Fighter for a 2-handed bladed weapon, which gives me +1 to melee rolls and causes 2 damage. He is a level 1 strong, which means he gets +1 per level to strength rolls that may come up. So it could be trying to open a locked gate or something like that. Battle Lust, very barbarian-y, right? When rolling 3 dice for activation, can add 1 to 1 die. Horde Fighter, level 1. So for each level, Osgoth reduces the outnumbering modifier by 1. So what that means, so if you have a horde that's attacking you, all those other models that are in base contact with you in that horde also provide support to that attack. So this helps reduce that outnumbering modifier. And he's also tough, level 1. So +1 level to Constitution rolls and rolls on the out of action table. So the out of action table is what happens when you go down, and we'll show that in an example of play. And he does have a negative trait, which is heavy drinker, which I just referenced page 36. So before each scenario, I roll on the heavy drinker table, and he'll either come into that scenario drunk, hungover, or hopefully he'll be fine. And each player character does have a dagger as a standard weapon, but the other equipment that they have is the equipment that is on your model. So Osgoth the Barbarian, he does not have armor. He has a two-handed bladed weapon, just your typical barbarian character. And then I've got a space for treasure, potions, which you really don't need since I have the cards, but I just stuck it there, and campaign notes. So this is a player character sheet that I created, and it's been downloaded on Board Game Geek on the game's file page. So if you're interested in downloading this, that is where you could find it. All right, so I put some terrain and some miniatures on the table. That way we could take a look at some of the mechanics on how to do a variety of actions, and also kind of demonstrate how the monsters work. But before I do, I just wanted to share with you where I got this terrain, because I know if you're like me and you see some cool terrain in a picture on Facebook or on YouTube, you're always asking, where did you get the terrain? And this terrain came from France. It's a studio called FTD Scenery, and they have an Etsy store and their own website. I purchased these 2 sets on Etsy, and the shipping was very reasonable from France to New York City. And the quality is awesome. So for example, I bought a rock set. Each rock is different. It is all made by hand, and as you can see here, it's beautifully flocked. Has some great details, well painted. It's hollow and it's completely solid material, so it is not foam. And in addition to rocks, FTD Scenery has hills and summer, winter settings, just a large variety. The 4 set I purchased, the backs is a very solid. Looks like some type of MDF, but you can see it's very solid. It's got a variety of different shapes, and very pleased with it. So if you're interested, just head on over to his website or his Etsy store. So now let's take a look at some of the actions a player character can take. And we'll start with movement. So we have this ranger here in the woods, and he's in broken ground. So movement is measured in inches, and like I mentioned before, player characters start with a movement of 4 inches per action. Now in broken ground, you must walk, which halves your movement, or risk falling down. So when you fall down, you become prone, which makes you vulnerable to attack, and you have to spend an action to stand back up. So what we want to do is have him get out of this broken ground. So I decided I'm going to see if I could roll for 2 actions to get him out. And hopefully I roll an 8 or better. That way I don't draw an event card. So as you can see here, I rolled a 19 and a 17. Great rolling. Hopefully I do that in the combat example. So he has 2 actions. So the first action is going to be movement, as well as the second. So he is 2 inches away from the edge, so he can walk, since he has 2 actions here, he can walk safely without falling down. If he was going to do a normal 4-inch move in the broken terrain, he would have to roll a DL, or danger level 10, to see if he succeeds. If he rolled below 10, he would fall down and be prone. Then I'd have to use my second action to stand him back up. But since I have the second action, I can now move him 4 inches. So that's 4 inches, to help out Osgoth, who has a horde trying to kill him. Now let's take a look at how ranged combat works. In this situation here, we have an elf archer, and she's on the rock here being charged by a goblin at the bottom of the screen. So it is her turn, and she has decided that she wants to take 3 actions. So she rolls 3d20s, and 2 of those are successful. She rolled a 10 and a 15, and she rolled a 7, meaning she has to draw an event card. So events are played before actions, and the event card that has been drawn is Ambush. So this will make for a good example, actually. A minion moves out of the spawning point, bush, boulder, etc., or table edge closest to the PC and charges or shoots the closest target. No PC may attempt an opportunity shot at the minion. Due to surprise, the minion's DL increases by 2. So this is a good time to explain opportunity shots. So a player character with a ranged weapon may perform an out-of-sequence shot at -2 against any foe or horde that's charging the player character or a friend that is within 2 inches of the player character. The shot takes place when the foe is 1 inch away, but it is done at a -2 modifier because it's a hurried shot. So no point blank bonus applies in this situation. So if you perform an opportunity shot and then fight a melee in the same turn, you fight at a -2. So we have a minion that gets spawned at a spawning point from the cover of this tree here, and it is a goblin archer. So the elf is the closest target to the goblin and is going to take a shot at her. So archery with foes works the same way with player characters, except that player characters have an opportunity to dodge the shot. Because if you remember, foes never roll dice, only player characters do. So the elf is going to roll a die, and if you recall, Goblin's danger level is 5, but 2 has been added to that because of the increase of the danger level in the card that was drawn due to the surprise. So the dice is rolled, and she rolled a 19, meaning she easily dodged that shot. It went right past her. So now she has her 2 actions to consider. So she could try to climb up the rock and run away, but no, that's not what we're doing here. We are going to take a shot at that charging goblin. So I could either shoot once at the charging goblin, and if I miss, I could try shooting again, or I could take 1 shot at each goblin within range there. But what I've decided to do is I'm going to use both actions to take an aimed shot. And so an aimed shot gives me +3 bonus to my attack roll. So the goblin's danger level is not 5 in this situation. It is 7 because it's versus a ranged attack, because goblins are difficult targets. So this aimed shot will help me secure a shot to kill this goblin. So I rolled the d20, and I rolled a 12, and I add the 3, so 15 total. So I easily took out this goblin. So that is how ranged combat works. There are some modifiers other than just the ones I shared. And so one is, and it's an important rule, I should explain this up front, is the ranges. So ranges for archery is 8 inches, but beyond that, you have to apply a -1 modifier for every 2 inches. So if that goblin was 10 inches away, I'd have to apply a -1 to my roll. So other modifiers, if target is in partial cover, it's -2 to the roll. Target is larger than man, you just look at the card of that monster. If it's point blank, meaning the target is within 2 inches, you get a +2 to your roll. And if the target is prone, it's a -4 to the roll unless within 2 inches. So like I said, you're very vulnerable if you end up prone and you're getting shot at or getting hacked at in a melee combat. So it is Osgoth's turn, and he's found himself in a bit of a pickle because he's now squared off against a horde of goblins. So he decided he needs as many activations as possible and rolled 3 activation dice. And what we see here is he rolled a 20, which is a success, rolled a 2, and rolled a 7. Now, there's a few things we can do to help Osgoth out here. First of all, let's take a look at his traits, and you can see the trait Battle Lust. So in Battle Lust, when rolling 3 dice for an activation, you can add 1 to 1 die. So fortunately for Osgoth, one of those failures was a 7, so he's going to use Battle Lust to increase that to 8, which is now a success. Now, he still has this 2, but there's a couple options available to him. Since he rolled a natural 20, he can use that critical success to either negate 1 die, or he can add an additional action. So what he's going to do is he is going to remove this 2, which leaves him with 2 actions that he can take. So he's going to use these actions to attack in melee these goblins. So attacking in melee requires 1 action if the player character attacks a foe. You may also use 2 actions to attack at a +3. So this is called a power blow. But we're not going to do that, and I'm going to show you why in just a sec here. So looking at Osgoth's abilities again, he has the fighter level ability. So that gives him +1 to melee rolls, and he also gets +2 damage because of his weapon. And he also has Horde Fighter. So for each level, the PC reduces the outnumbering modifier by 1. So what this means is that since the goblins are in a horde, normally their danger level is 5 for a goblin, but you add +1 to the danger level for every goblin in addition to the one that he's attacking. So for example here, you've got DL of 5 +3, so the danger level is now 8. So Osgoth does have another advantage, and that is that he's at a higher elevation. So if you fight in melee at a higher elevation, that gives you +3 to your roll. So with his fighter ability and his elevation, that gives him +4 to a die roll. So we're going to go ahead and roll a d20, see what happens. And he rolled a 9. So we add 3 for elevation, +1 for melee, so it's a total of 14, which exceeds the goblin's danger level of 8. So he takes out 1 goblin. So he has 1 action left. He's going to attack again. And so he's at a +4 die roll modifier. And okay, that's not good. He rolled a 4. So, well, maybe it is good. So 4 + 4 is 8. And the goblin's danger level is now, because he killed 1, is 5, 6, 7. So actually he just succeeded and is able to kill another goblin. And that concludes his turn. Now, in melee, either you hit or you get hit. So there's no uneventful melees. So if it was the goblin's turn and they attack Osgoth, it's the same type of process that you go through. What Osgoth does is he rolls to hit, and if he missed, then he would get hit. If he succeeded, then he would hit the goblin. Now there's other actions that you could take on your turn, such as throwing a flask of oil or throwing holy water, searching bodies for treasure. So if you recall that goblin warrior, they carry 1d6 of silver pieces. So if you, for an action, search a body, a dead goblin, you roll a die and get that much silver pieces. Now, what happens if one of your player characters dies? Well, if another player character goes up to the downed player character, what you do is you would roll a die. And it's there's an out of action table in the game where you roll a d20 plus any levels in the tough trait, if any, and then you determine what the results are. So if you roll a 1 to 6, the PC is dead. But if you carry the body off the board, then the body can be resurrected for 500 silver pieces out in town. If you roll 7 to 10, the PC is comatose but alive. The PC will survive if carried off the board. Now, if you roll an 11 to 13, the PC comes to but has a -4 on all rolls, only has 1 hit point and a movement of 1 inch. If you roll a 14 to 18, the PC comes to but has a -2 on all rolls, 1 hit point, and moves at half speed. And if you roll a 19 or a 20, it's just a flesh wound. So the PC recovers 2 hit points, may stand up with his next action, and perform normally. While Sellswords and Spellslingers is a lot of fun just playing a one-off scenario, the most fun comes from playing a campaign of linked scenarios. And in between the scenarios, there's a lot of different activities that you can do. So you can go to town, get part-time jobs, you can carouse in the taverns, you can repair armor, you could trade items. There's lots of different options, as you can see here, that you can do. The only unfortunate part for me is that in between scenarios, you can only choose one of these options. And a lot of these require silver pieces if you want to train or study, gamble. But some activities allow you to make money as well. So you could work as a laborer, you could join the city guard, you could become a vermin exterminator, compete in an archery competition. So lots of cool stuff here to look through. The rule book, in addition to the rules, has a few charts in the back. This is a weapons chart, which lists the different types of weapons, the damage they cause if hit, how much they cost, the traits used, and the special notes, such as ranges, things like that for ranged weapons. And there's also a shopping list chart. So when you're in town, there's items you can purchase, such as potions, scrolls, things like that. And you see some redundancy, such as gambling. But it's a handy chart, especially if you're creating your own scenarios and creating an RPG type of campaign. There's also guidelines for unengaged NPC behavior. And in the back is a brief rules summary. In my opinion, it's not complete, so it's something I plan to do for myself, is to create a more robust one, a more complete one. And there you have it. That's Sellswords and Spellslingers. I like this game a lot, and I do recommend it. One thing I really love about this game is the activation system, because it adds a lot of tension and fog of war to the game. The game is also easy to get into because it's miniature agnostic. If you recall, the monsters were very, a lot of people say generic, but I say classic, because a lot of us own those type of miniatures. If we are D&D players, Games Workshop players, so on and so forth. And the terrain requirements are pretty basic, pretty general. There's no very specific terrain you need or to build to play one scenario. Speaking of scenarios, there's 10 scenarios in the book. And you could see, just based on the pictures here, the scenario requirements are pretty standard. Bushes, stones, trees, a tower. There's also a save the village or defend the village scenario. Spiderweb. And a house for a healer in the mountains. These are all linked, and some of these scenarios are repeatable for play. And so, and there's some more expansions that are out there. One is Count Cariali's Curse. It is a vampire scenario, And the newest product is called Last Stand at Mistham. It is a goblin and orc smashing campaign where your heroes are hired to defend a town against attack. But there's a couple twists to the campaign that involve some non-PC players. So that is what I plan to do next on the Fantasy Skirmisher, is play through Last Stand at Mistham. And now that this video hopefully has given you a basic idea of how the game is played, it'll be easier for you to follow along with the playthrough. Now, as far as my quibbles with the game, I really don't have any. The main one is just the rule book. It's very readable, the rules are there, they're easy to figure out, but they're a little disorganized where some information is scattered over a couple different sections. So for example, when you're creating a character, there is a chapter for character creation, but it doesn't mention anything about starting movement, starting hit points. Those are in different areas of the book. Also, it's kind of strange that the very last rule section is spells, which comes after the scenarios and the campaign activities. Also, it is an action to cast a spell, but it's not listed in the action section. And also the action section, let's see if I could find it here, includes rules that have nothing to do with actions. It just expands on things like ranged combat. I plan, like I said, with a summary worksheet to reorganize it so that way if it's a game that's been on the shelf for a little while, it'll be easy for me to get back into it with a single sheet, or if I need a reference rule, so that way I'm not flipping through the book. All right, that's all I have. I'll see you next time on the Fantasy Skirmisher, and we'll start playing Sellswords and Spellslingers. Stay tuned.